Hello folks, my name is Mark. This is Mark's Movie Reviews. How you guys doing? So today we're talking about Rise of Skywalker, which is the last Star Wars movie in the Skywalker saga. And yeah, I think unless you're a major Star Wars fan, you're probably going to be a little disappointed by this movie. As a kid, the very first movie I ever remember seeing in a movie theater actually was Empire Strikes Back, right? When I was like 4 years old and stuff. You know, those big walker things in the snow really made a big impression. And, you know, I really wanted to like this movie. I really wanted to. It's got everything you can want in a Star Wars movie. It's just, there's some serious problems with it. And my problems that I have is not with any of the effects or with the performances of the actors or anything like that. You know, that all of that's fantastic, right? It's really the plot, because there's a lot of plot holes, you know, and it's very, very jammed with too much. There's too much plot, and the pacing is just way too fucking fast. You know, I want to start with the actors and things. Everybody nails it, right? There are no bad performances in this movie. Everybody is awesome. You know, the actress that plays Rey, I can't remember her name, but she's actually a really good actress. You know, there's a part where her lineage is uncovered of who she really is, you know, who she's related to. And after that point, there's this undercurrent of anger in everything she does. You know, this anger and resentment and, you know, she's a little more like wild and right. That's really good. The guy Poe actually gets to stand out a little bit. And he actually gets to be a little roguish, you know, and you actually kind of start to see a little bit of Han Solo in this guy, because that's like who he was supposed to, like, you know, be the stand-in for, Han Solo. And you can kind of see that a little bit in there too. He's like, oh, he's got a little bit of a past, and he's kind of like, you know, crazy, whatnot. Even the dude Finn kind of steps up a little bit and becomes a little bit more of a hero. You know, it's really good. Those guys are really good. Even Harrison Ford shows up in this movie for a little bit, and that's like, you know, it has an awesome scene, and that was really cool that they got him to show up and for the swan song a little bit. So that was really cool. One thing that happened, so Carrie Fisher, you know, died right last year, and her character Princess Leia has a very big part in this movie. And what they did is they took footage from The Last Jedi and, like, you know, Force Awakens, and kind of spliced it in there to make it look like she was talking to people. And unfortunately for me, I don't know, it didn't really happen. You know, it really kind of felt like they were building the conversations around the footage they had of her, right? And what I mean by that is that other people will be talking about stuff, and then she'll say something that seemingly doesn't have anything to do with what they're saying, you know, and it really feels jumbled and out of place. And I know that's the best they could do. And actually, the other alternative would have been to digitally reconstruct Princess Leia's face. And thank God they didn't do that shit, because I think there would have been some backlash for that. So yeah, I don't know, you know, but they do give Princess Leia a good send-off. She gets, you know, the character dies in the movie, and it's an important death that actually is a major plot point for the film. So that was really cool. That was really cool. She just didn't die off screen or some shit like that, you know. Now, speaking of shit that happens off screen, as you all know, the Emperor comes back in this movie. That happens off screen, which is like, the fuck? You know, like, why would you do, like, so, okay. The Emperor in Star Wars is most likely the craziest, like the best movie villain of all time. That's the Emperor of Star Wars. When you think, like, who's the most evil villain ever that's ever been on film ever, it's the Emperor. Okay, he's more evil than Darth Vader. He's the worst. And you would think that his return would be a major event, you know. It would be a major, huge shocker kind of thing. And they fucking do it off screen. In fact, they don't even show it. It starts the movie, and the opening crawl that comes down just says, "The dead speak. The Emperor of Palpatine has returned." It's like, why didn't you show that? Why didn't you, the movie starts with Kylo Ren killing a bunch of fools and hunting for some magic fucking box thing. Why not cut that shit out and show the Emperor coming back? Right? And, it really feels like that was a major wasted opportunity. And it actually kind of feels like they did it like that because, to be honest, Last Jedi kind of fucked up the flow of the trilogy, And so it seems like this movie is so jam-packed full of shit that they had to take the story that should have been in Last Jedi and put it in this movie. And then they realize, oh, we've only got 2.5 hours to do it. So that's why everything moves so fast, because they were making up for Last Jedi. That's kind of really what it feels like, because they pretty much undo everything that happens in Last Jedi, They get rid of all of that shit. The message there was like, oh, you don't have to be, anybody can be a Jedi. And then it goes to this, it's like, nope, back to the lineage kind of thing. And, so like, yeah, it really kind of feels like they dropped the ball there. The pacing is way too fast. Well, it doesn't give you any time to breathe, to process what's going on. And not just the characters on screen should have time to process things, but the people at home are not able to process, the people watching. Like, you need time to process shit so that when other events happen and it has an emotional impact, right? For example, there's a part where Kylo Ren and Rey are fighting in the desert, and she does a backflip and chops up his fucking TIE fighter, and then he comes out, and then Chewbacca gets caught, and he's on a shuttle, and it's flying away, and they're using the Force to stop the shuttle, and then, Rey accidentally shoots Force lightning at it, and blows the shuttle up. And so you think that Chewbacca is dead, right? And everybody's sad. Oh no, Chewbacca's dead, blah, blah, blah. And then 5 minutes later, he's alive, right? And the heroes have to invade a fucking Star Destroyer and all this other shit. And then they find him, yay. And it's like, you didn't have any time. Like, the whole time this is happening, everything's coming at you at a breakneck speed. And not only do the characters not have time to process any shit that's happening, but the people watching don't have time. And so when Chewbacca comes back, it's not like, oh, hey, he's alive. It's like, oh, yeah, he's alive. You know what I mean? Like, and it's more like if you would have had that happen at the beginning of the movie, then at the end of the movie, have Chewbacca come back, then it would have been the impact would have been a lot more, And that's the problem. That's the problem, because they have to fit so much shit into this movie in order to make up for, Last Jedi, right? That there's no time to stretch anything out and give you time to process and savor things, and that way you can reveal stuff and it hits you harder. There's no time for any of that. They're just shoveling everything at you as fast as they can, and there's like the shit like that happens in the whole fucking movie, and you can really kind of tell that when they were writing it, it's like they had these scenes and they just needed ways to get to the scenes. So for example, they go to this planet that looks like World War II France, and the First Order is rounding people up and executing them and shit like that, right? And they go there because, C-3PO can't translate the Sith language because they find this knife that tells you where the last, it's like a knife, but it's really a map, and it tells you where the last Jedi Sith holocron tracker thingy is, whatever, and he can't do it, so then they have to reset his memory in order for him to be able to tell them where the fucking thing is. Who cares? Right? And they're there, and then Poe has a girlfriend, like an old girlfriend who wears a mask, and it's like, okay, well, they need a reason to get onto the Star Destroyer. So how do they do it? Well, she has a magic coin, like a magic, First Order landing disc or some shit. And with this disc, you can take off and you can land at any port and you can anywhere. And then she suddenly gives it to him, and it's like, yeah, they needed a way to get onto the fucking thing, and that's what they came up with. And it feels very, artificial. Right. Like, there could have been other ways. They could have had him sneak onto a shuttle. They could have had him storm the shuttle. They could have, there's lots of different ways they could have done it. And instead, it's like, you can almost tell that there's a bunch of writers in a room coming up with like sitting around a table saying they need to be able to get onto the Star Destroyer. Oh, make them have a first order magic medallion, like, and it's like the movie is filled with shit like that. It's filled with these like transparent like MacGuffins, useless, meaningless MacGuffins that they just thought up, and it's obvious. It's so like obvious. It's obvious. I don't know. It feels like fan fiction is what it feels like. Another example: the Death Star from Return of the Jedi has blown up and it crashes. Pieces of it crash onto Endor, right? And they go to Endor because that's where the magic Sith. They get this Sith knife, and it has runes in it. And supposedly this is like this ancient artifact that tells you where the next Sith holocron tracker thingy is, right? And so they go to Endor, and then here's the knife, and then they see the crashed remains of the Death Star, and it's got these ridges. And they hold the knife up to it, and the knife has the same ridges, and it's like, oh, okay, well, it's really a map. And then a little thing shoots out, and it goes, it's right there. How? So it's like, wait a minute, but this is a knife that's like thousands of years old. So did somebody really make, like, how old is the knife really? Is it really only like 15 years old? Right? Because like in the timeline of the movies, that only happened like 30 years ago. So why would somebody make an ancient Sith knife thing with a little pointer thingy in order to tell you where the holocron thingy is? Like, it doesn't make any sense. It's kind of like in Raiders of the Lost Ark, when he has the Staff of Ra and he puts it into a thing and the laser shoots down and tells you where the Ark is. And it's kind of like that, but if somebody made that rod and medallion thing like 20 years ago and just put the Ark away 20, you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't make any sense. The movie is filled with shit like that. A lot of this movie kind of feels like, it feels fan fiction-y, Like, it feels like if you were to get a 14-year-old kid and say, what do you want to see in a Star Wars movie, right? And then they went and filmed it, like, there's a comic book out there called Axe Cop, right? And in Axe Cop, what it is that the guy that draws Axe Cop goes with his 5-year-old little brother and plays with his little brother as they get toys and stuff. And then he writes it down and he makes a comic book out of it. And it's fucking hilarious. If you've never read Axe Cop, it's the funniest shit ever. It's like, there's a cop with an axe and they have a dinosaur with like machine gun arms. And then his like partner is called, Avocado Soldier and shit like that. It's hilarious. And there's parts of this movie that really feels like J.J. Abrams went and got his 5-year-old son and asked him what he wanted to see in Star Wars. Yeah, it's like, I want to have lightsaber fights. So they have this awesome lightsaber fight on, there's waves and oceans and they're doing all these backflips and all of this shit, and it's like, and it's got to have the biggest space battle ever, and I want to see, the biggest space battle ever, and every Star Destroyer has a Death Star gun on it, and they actually do that. There's like the Emperor from the hidden Sith homeworld raises up, goes, rah, and then all of these Star Destroyers come up out of the ground and out of the ocean and shit. And each one of them has a Star Destroyer gun on it, and it's like the stakes have to be that much higher. It couldn't just be like, because why? Well, in the first one they had a Star Destroyer, and then in Force Awakens they had the Star Destroying planet that could blow up an entire solar system, and now each one of the Star Destroyers has a big ass gun on it, and it's just like, then the rebels show up, the Resistance show up. And they have every spaceship ever, right? Shows up, because Lando Calrissian is in this movie, and his only job is to go and be in one scene where he goes and rallies the rest of the galaxy to come kill the Sith, right? And every spaceship ever shows up, and there's this gigantic spaceship battle with 50,000 Star Destroyers and 50,000 other spaceships, and they all fighting blah 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 blah. And they land a troop carrier, and then the rebels come out, or the Resistance come out, and they're riding horses and all this other shit. And it's like fan fiction, It seriously is. It's like if you got a 5-year-old kid with his toys, with the Indians are attacking the spacemen and all this other shit. And it's just like, oh. And in some respect, it's fucking awesome. Don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. The end battle is seriously massive and is actually kind of cool. And there's like shit flying everywhere, and it really seems like that they took the end space battle in like Return of the Jedi, and they're like, okay, this space battle rules. We need to make one better and bigger, and they just went with every crazy ass idea they have, you know, and god, and there's just so many little weird plot holes in it, you know, like they have this antenna that all of the ships can't take off out of the Sith homeworld unless they have a coordinated launch thing for some fucking reason. So they use this antenna thing, but then they transfer it to the other ship when they figure out the rebels are going to blow up the antenna. Well, how come if they can just transfer it to one ship, how come they can't transfer it to all the ships? Why do they? No, because there has to be a way for them to stop them from taking off. And it's good. It's good if you don't think about it, if you just go and you turn your brain off and all that shit. And just go to enjoy the explosions and the Indians riding the fucking horses to blow up the Star Destroyers, and how every Star Destroyer has a massive gun that looks like a huge schlong underneath it. And of course, all you gotta do is shoot the gun and the whole fucking thing blows up. Seems like kind of a bit of a weak point, you know, in your fucking like galaxy destroying fucking fleet there. And don't try to think about it. Don't think about where all this shit came from. It's like, where did all the people come from to come for all? How did they build all of these fucking Star Destroyers? Like 10,000 fucking Star Destroyers? Like, where did they? How did he train all of the people? Were they just always there? You know, was the Emperor always there? I don't know. Speaking about the Emperor, you know, it's like I think a lot of people are kind of like, oh well, this invalidates, you know, Anakin Skywalker's fucking arc or whatever. Yeah, and they never really say. It's like, well, was he a clone? You know, because they show clones of Snoke in there. So Snoke is just some clone that he was controlling, whatever. Hand wave it away. Who cares? It's bullshit. You know, but is the Emperor a clone? Is he like a zombie? And I think he's actually a zombie. Like, I think the other Sith followers, because there's this whole room of like dudes in hoods that they never show their faces, and they're like the evil Sith followers or whatever. I think they found the remains of the Emperor and brought him back to life. But then it's not really clear. It's like, is that what happened? Did the Emperor just survive? Did they clone the Emperor? But why would they clone him all decrepit and fucked up? Like, he doesn't have legs, his fingers are all fucked up. I don't know. But I think he's like a zombie, you know, and that actually makes more sense. Of course, it would have made even more sense to just have the Emperor be a ghost, you know, be a force spirit or whatever. But you know, but anyway, and you know, and then there's this whole thing at the end where and it's kind of hard to tell what the fuck is happening exactly when Rey is fighting the Emperor. Like, he wants her to kill him, and then he'll take over her body, but he's the Emperor, so he has to tell her his plan. Like, why not trick her into killing you or whatever? And then, you know, she uses the Force lightsabers to blow him away somehow, and I don't know. It's sort of like so much shit just happens that by the end of it, this is what you look like. You're just like, oh, what the fuck? What is happening with this movie? Like, that's what I felt like when I left. I felt overwhelmed trying to process a bunch of ridiculous bullshit, fan fiction-y bullshit. And when it was all over, I was kind of relieved. It's like, okay, finally that shit's over. You know. And now I don't want you to give you guys the wrong impression, because it's not a bad movie. I mean, it's Star Wars, so it's not shitty, you know. It's definitely better than any of the prequels. Not as good, though, in my opinion, as Force Awakens or even Last Jedi. Last Jedi is actually better than this movie, in my opinion. This one, they just did too much. They tried to do too much. They tried to jam it all into one package. They should have just made 2 movies and made episode 10. Fuck it. Who cares? Why does it have to be a trilogy? Just make it a quadrilogy or whatever. But too late now. You know, I mean, it's really not a bad movie. And it has all the right elements. It's like, you know, making a casserole. You know, you have all the right ingredients, but you could still fuck it up pretty bad. And that's kind of what happened here. You know, they fucked it up. So I don't know, but you know, the thing is, it's Star Wars, so it's not You know, even a shitty Star Wars movie is actually better than most other sci-fi fantasy movies. So it's definitely worth seeing, especially if you're a Star Wars fan. So go fucking see it or whatever. Chances are you have already. But yeah, I don't know, man. It's like, where they take it from here, you know, who knows? I think personally they should really let Star Wars kind of die for a little while. You know, give it some time for some demand to build up, and then make some movies that are not related to any of this shit, you know, at all. You know, like The Mandalorian is really good. It's something that happens in the same universe, but it's not connected to Jedi's or Sith or Skywalkers or Han Solo or anything. Just go off to a completely different part of the galaxy. Maybe have some like Jedi's or a Gonk droid or something, and take it from there. And that's really what needs to happen. Like, wrap all the Empire Skywalker shit up. That's it. No more of that stuff. And give it like 5 years. You know, give it some time for people to want Star Wars again. And I really think they could take it into a lot of really cool places. But unfortunately, the place they took it really wasn't that cool. So anyway, that's all I got. Adios, folks.